Hello and welcome to this very irregular redacted nuisance. It's irregular simply because I haven't been able, with my CPTSD, I just haven't had the brain power and the energy to do this on as regular basis as I would have liked. And I thought, oh, I'm feeling in quite a good mode, so I'm going to record a couple. I'll put them up with a bit of delay between them, but they're just going to be the same usual format, which is me talking for around 10 to 15 minutes without any editing, without listening back to it, just putting it up and hoping that it makes sense to more than one other person out there. So, first off, welcome. Hey, I'm Dr. J. Use they as a pronoun. Why is this called redacted nuisance? Well, I wanted to call it queer nuisance. Um, but if I call it queer nuisance, then it's not going to show up in a lot of places. It also means there are some people who may not feel able to listen to this if they see the word queer, because it would out them in their situation, and I don't want to do that to them. So it is called redacted nuisance, and I keep as much as possible mention of queerness out of the descriptions, even though I talk about it here, because I am queer. What a surprise. And that's just trying to put it all together. But today would have been a friend's birthday, and I think she would have either been 97 or 98, and my inability to get that number correct was a long-standing thread between us, that I always had her at least a year older than what she was, much to her great disdain at my bad mental arithmetic. I don't know why. So I've got some stuff that I put together just after she died, and I called it, it's 20 scenes from a friendship. And what might happen is you might get one or more scenes over the next little bit. So, who was my lovely friend? My lovely friend was called Renee. She was the most credited and worked on far more things than she was credited on, person within the UK film industry. And I met her, and the first scene is about how I met her. I met her in 2000 and, I'm going to say 7, could be 8. Time, it's a mystery. And I knew her until she died in 2023. I'm going to say it was 2023. And we had been friends for that length of time. And it's a friendship that was marvelous and wonderful, and all the things you could want for, and intergenerational, and across so many different things. But she was the older queer that everybody wanted to grow up to be, even though she did not identify as queer. And I don't think she was queer in the sense as in LGBTQ. She was not she was an ally to the LGBTQ, but also she was queer in her approach to life. She was queer in the way that she was non-normative in a lot of the approaches that she had. And she would talk to me about her approach to love, life, sex, gender, sexuality, things that her children don't know, and I'm not going to reveal those. Don't worry, guys. Those are not things that I'm going to talk about, because they were very private things between me and Renee that we talked about, that we discussed. So the first scene that I'm going to talk about is the scene where I met her. So I was, at the time, I was a suited and booted style. And from the outside, people would read me as butch lesbian. From the inside, I was very much not. But also, when I say butch lesbian, suited and booted, there's a lot of dark colours and very, very plain shirts. Imagine somebody wearing a brown pinstriped suit in a 1960s cut, with a purple paisley shirt and a very loud paisley with a very wide collar, or a very large collar, and a tie, loosely tied, because I hated ties being throttle tied, very loosely tied, large kipper style tie that was clashing but also complementary to the rest of the colours. That was me suited and booted. So just to give you a sense of, I was doing some performative gender, but I was not performing that gender quite as one should. And at the time, I had discovered the cheap seats at Covent Garden, which are the best. You can, at the time, I could go see anything that was on at Covent Garden for somewhere between £5 and £10 a ticket. And it was a 10-minute walk from work, from where I was working, the office that I was in, up to Covent Garden, and I would walk up there and just go see something. And there was a performance, and I think it's Rolando. It could have been Orlando. If I describe it, somebody's going to, well, if anyone listens to this, they'll mention it. Go, oh, it's actually this one. So it is a Handel opera. I think it's got 4 parts. It's definitely a soprano, a tenor, and a bass, and possibly a second tenor. And it's your standard 4-part oratorio-based opera with lots of beautiful singing of these wonderful pieces played with an orchestra, and then in between there's lots of recitative with harpsichords. So there's lots of percussionist harpsichord bits in between. And one of the things that I particularly remember about this production was that there was a sheep. This was not a bar sheep. This was a plastic fiberglass sheep that at more than one memorable point is patted by the soprano, who I think is a shepherdess, pats the sheep, and it has a resounding thonk that had me, Joan and Renee, in giggles, because it was just this wonderful, unlikely moment in the middle of this beautiful, meditative, wonderful Handel music. Just this gorgeous thonk, like the thonk that you get when you hit a shop dummy or something like that. It was absolutely wonderful and bonkers production, which you often get in between the seasons. So this was kind of that in between the seasons opera. So I was in the cheap seats, as was Renee and her cousin Joan, who was over from America. They were also in the cheap seats. They were supposed to be standing, and this is a 3-hour opera, so this tells you a lot about the stamina of these two. This was supposed to be a standing. They were supposed to be in the standing seats behind me, and I was supposed to be way down the end in the lower slips, like right besides the curtain, looking down on the orchestra. But we had all just kind of gone, there's not many people here, we'll sit in some slightly better seats, costing about 3 times what we'd paid for them. And if somebody tells us to move, we'll move to our seats. And we just sat down and started chatting. And so there was a few misunderstandings that day. Renee thought I was a lovely young man for quite some time. It took a little bit of time for Renee and Joan both to realise that I was not a lovely young man. I was a lovely young non-binary person. At the time, I was just starting to come into my non-binariness. So I think they met me as a lovely young, I'm not quite sure what I am. I thought they were both in their 60s. Later on, they were very flattered when I said this, because they were both in their early 80s. Or, no, this is where the whole joke becomes. I thought Renee was 81 or 82. She had just turned, she was either 79 or had just turned 80. So the fact that I had actually added a couple of years to her age was just a whole thing. And we just started talking, and it was lovely. And these were really generous, welcoming people. I talked about the fact that I was doing a performance and that I did some performance. We talked about opera. We talked about the performance scene in London. We talked about things that they'd seen. Joan had lived in New York, or would travel to New York and go to the Met Opera a lot. And so they both knew everyone everything. They had seen everyone and everything. I didn't know who Renee was. So, but she would tell me about, even just in this first meeting, and it was not name dropping. This was not name dropping of, oh, I know this person, la 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 la. It was very much, oh, I've seen this and you would have loved it. Or this this was amazing and I love, love, love. And one of the Renee things that still just resonates is her way of saying love, love, love. And it was just this wonderful expression of how much she'd enjoyed something, how much she'd seen something, how much she'd enjoyed a person, how much she'd enjoyed an interaction. And it was just love, love, love. And so hilariously, we sat together the entire night. They offered me whiskey. I declined it because I don't drink. They thought this was amusing to sit through a 3-hour opera completely sober, but also they totally respected my choice not to drink. We got on. Renee gave me her number at the end of the night, and I said, I actually really enjoyed this person. I am going to actually try and make this connection. And I I did not think hook up with this person, but it was more like I think there is a connection. I will keep this connection going. So the first scene of our friendship is essentially sitting in the slightly better paid, slightly better lower slips seats. So kind of about a third of the way along the lower slips, just as it turns. So you're sitting about 20 stall seats back from the stage rather than right beside the stage. Sitting there and just chatting between parts of, but during the intervals. The opera's so long it's got 2 intervals. Just chatting during the intervals, talking about the opera, talking about other operas we've seen, and just connecting with somebody and finding across all of the different things that we might have a connection there. And that is the first scene. And I miss her because I think there's stuff going on today that she would be enraged by, but there's also stuff going on today that she would love. She would love the show that I saw last night, which was Nye. Oh my God, I need to talk about that. She would love so much of the world that is happening, and she would also be so infuriated and so out there at so much of the world that is happening, and I miss her for that. And every time I've got a picture of her, and it just makes me smile every time I look at it at the moment. And there are small things that she gave me, and they just bring me so much joy. So I wanted to kind of share that joy and give you a sense of friendship and what friendship can mean and what friendship does mean in this world where sometimes we just don't make those connections.